Hey guys, MoiDawg here, and today we're going to be going over the anti-tank kits in Squad. The following video is a complete overview for both light and heavy anti-tank weapons. This is intended for players of all skill levels, and I've created this video in a way where each weapon will go over a specific skill, and then explain a tip on how to use this kit more effectively. For example, we start simple, with how to range your weapon. And then later on, we combine a bunch of these skills and accurately range a target, lead it while it's moving, and disable it. We'll also explain and cover key vehicle components to aim for and general anti-tank strategy at the end. Playing anti-tank means you have to know a lot about your kit, the map, and enemy vehicles, so there's a lot to learn. By the end of the video, you should have everything you need to know for each weapon and how to use it effectively, since these tips and skills build upon each other. I will say, however, that this video includes the factions and weapons as of Beta 18. More than likely, we'll be getting additional factions and weapons in the near future, but the weapon breakdowns and concepts covered here should be able to help bridge that gap. If there is anything that is added to the game that I do think would be beneficial for you guys to know, I'll link that additional video in the description below. Before we kick it off, I do want to remind everyone that I stream a lot of Squad on Twitch, at twitch.tv/MoiDawg. I squad lead, run vehicles, and play practically every kit in the game. So if you have any further questions or you just want to see some Squad live, come hang out. We also run a viewer-only Squad on Supporter Sundays, where I lock a squad and squad lead for you guys. It's a lot of fun, so I hope to see you there. But let's get back to the anti-tank. To begin, let's go over some terms you may or may not be familiar with. LAT stands for light anti-tank, and HAT stands for heavy anti-tank. From here on out, you'll hear me say LAT or HAT, and it means those specifically. Although the names might be self-explanatory, just in case you're not sure, light anti-tank players have weaker rockets used against soft targets like infantry or lightly armored vehicles, whereas heavy anti-tank players have more powerful rockets used against medium and heavy armored vehicles like Bradleys, BMPs, and tanks. Additionally, you will see and often hear players or squad leaders call for specific ammunition types while in combat. Frag, fragmentation rounds, or anti-infantry rounds. These weapons do not do any damage to light vehicles. They're infantry-only weapons. HE, or high explosive, are Canadian-only rounds as well. They are just like fragmentation rounds for RPGs, and should only be used on anti-infantry. High explosive anti-tank rounds, or heat rounds, are the light anti-tank weapons. These are used to destroy lightly armored vehicles or disable tracked or other heavy vehicles. Tandem are your big boys. Tandem rounds are your HAT rounds, and they're used to destroy heavy vehicles in a couple shots, or can even one-tap lighter armed vehicles with well-placed rounds. But before we get into HAT, let's first take a look at the actual kits themselves, starting with LAT. The easiest way to classify LAT is by dividing the kit into either anti-infantry or anti-vehicle, which may seem odd for a class that is literally called light anti-tank. For the most part, LATs provide the important role of disabling and destroying light vehicles, but some factions, like the Insurgents, have strong anti-infantry capabilities as well. For that reason, we can divide the weapons like so. On the left side, we have our anti-vehicle rounds, the AT-4, LAWs, RPG-26, and the RPG-7 and 7v2. On the right, we have the same RPG-7, 7v2 that can also be anti-infantry. These RPGs have the capability of firing both anti-vehicle and anti-infantry rounds, which we'll get into specifics later. Let's first go over the LAT weapon for the Americans, British, and Canadians, the LAW. Now, the LAW is called a few different things depending on the faction, but for our purposes, we can say that if you're playing on any one of these teams, you're going to be using this weapon the same way. It fires a heat round that can be ranged up to 400 meters, is fairly weak, and its primary use is against light vehicles. If you don't know how to range, press X and scroll up or down. This will be a very common keybind as AT, so make sure you know how to do it. Additionally, double check you're at the right range when you are firing, because if you do use X and scroll wheel, whatever range you left it is the range it's going to be on. If you want to double check, look at the bottom right of your screen, and that is your current range for the weapon you have in your hands. The only difference between the factions is that the Americans can also select the AT-4 for their LAT. It is slightly stronger than the LAW, incredibly accurate, and can range up to 500 meters, 100 meters further than the LAW. There is less room for error at longer distances when you're aiming your shot. For this 500-meter shot, you can see that I aim just slightly below the body of the scout car, resulting in it missing the target. In a real game, this vehicle would have probably driven away, and I'd be out an AT round. Although it will most likely not destroy an armored light vehicle, it could do up to 50% damage, and also scare him away. Taking advantage of your longer range weapons is key as LAT, and you can do it all by yourself without asking for observation marks by using your binoculars. As you can see here, the bottom left of the sight has a sloping, triangle-looking area. This is actually used to range targets, from 200 meters all the way up to 1,000 meters by simply placing the bottom of the vehicle at this horizontal line and finding where the top of the vehicle, not including the turret, touches. This is a Stadia sight, and although we're using it to range a vehicle, the Stadia on the binoculars is originally used to range infantry targets that are 1.7 meters or just over 5.5 feet tall, as denoted by the 1.7 below. This is about the size of an average soldier, and when we use it for its intended target, we can see that the soldier fills the entire space between the horizontal line and the range indicator above. Now, when we use the Stadia to range a vehicle without including its turret, we get a quick and fairly accurate range we'd otherwise be unable to get without observation marks from our squad leader. This is simply a shortcut, but it works on almost every single vehicle in the game, so make sure you take advantage of it, especially if you're out on your own or you have no other way to get an accurate range on a target. For this scout car, we can see that the wheels are roughly touching the horizontal line, and the top of the car itself is about midway through this sloped line, indicating 500 meters. We line up our shot, once again aiming center mass, and boom, target hit. By using your entire kit, you can not only become self-sufficient, but also deadly accurate at all ranges. The Russians also have a weapon that looks and fires like the Law and AT-4, the RPG-26. Although it might look the same, it only has an accurate range of 250 meters, and the sight itself covers a lot of your screen when you ADS. Out of all the AT weapons, this one is my least favorite by far, since the ranging itself isn't as intuitive as others. You can only range for 50, 100, 150, and 250 meters, which makes for targets in the 200 to 300 meter range very difficult to hit. However, the RPG-26 has one unique advantage. The kit itself allows you to use a high-powered 1P78 optic on your rifle. I would strongly recommend that you don't engage targets greater than that 250 meters. And for light vehicles like transports or lodges, don't waste an AT round. Instead, pull out your rifle and try to hit the driver. By killing the driver, you will still remove the vehicle from going to its original objective, and you can save your RPG for a much more threatening target. Now, moving on to the other factions, both insurgents and regular militia have the RPG-7. It's an extremely straightforward kit, but as mentioned at the start of the LAT overview, it has the capability of firing both anti-vehicle and anti-infantry rounds. They can both be ranged to 500 meters, but make sure you use the correct round for the correct target. Fragmentation rounds will not do damage to vehicles. When you fire a heat round, as I am here, the impact will show an explosion, indicating you've landed the round and damaged the target. If you use a frag round, this same lightly armored vehicle will receive no damage, and a sparkling deflecting shot will indicate that. This rule can also be set for infantry targets. Heat rounds landing next to a player will do minimal splash damage depending on how close you land the shot. This is because the round itself is not intended to splash, meaning that the only way to kill an infantry player is to hit them directly. This, ultimately, is a waste of a heat round, so use your frag. They're meant to kill infantry. Another benefit of these kits is that they can also have 2 heat rounds. Now, although I've said that LAT is used primarily for disabling vehicles, depending on your shots, you could easily kill lightly armored vehicles in 2 rounds if you know where to aim. If you haven't seen this before, load up Jensen's range and go up near the vehicles to check it out. This area has a model of every vehicle in the game, their armor, and their components. Heavy armor is indicated by blue, whereas light armor is indicated by red. As a LAT, we're looking for the lightly armored areas as well as the engine block, which is dark green. Vehicles are built differently, and as we can see, the Striker has its engine up front, but the Scout car, on the other hand, has its engine in the back. The rear plate is heavily armored, so although it might always be an easier shot to make, hitting the side paneling where the engine is will not only knock the engine out, but do more damage since the round will penetrate more. Now, if we combine everything that we've learned so far with the RPG-7, I listen and see that the spandrel is on the other side of the berm. Knowing that the engine is in the back of this vehicle, but that side armor is weakest, I aim for about the middle of the vehicle to account for the travel time and the fact that it's moving. The round hits the target, and the engine is destroyed, as shown by the smoke, sparks, and crackling sound coming from the rear of the vehicle. The spandrel can no longer move. I take another shot, nearly destroying it, but thanks to my motorbike, I can quickly rearm, get another heat round, and finish it off. During this time, we see that the driver has bailed and runs away. Once the vehicle is destroyed, my next target is now the infantry dismount. However, my first shot completely misses the target because I left this frag round at 300 meters. Remember, although the RPGs use the same firing tube, the game sees them as two completely different weapons, meaning that you'll have to range them separately. I fix my mistake, take aim, and fire. Now that we're familiar with the RPG-7, let's take a look at the RPG-7V2, the Russians' primary LAT weapon. The only difference with this kit is that it's equipped with a PGO scope. This might seem intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can quickly acquire and hit targets because of how much information is right in front of you. As a LAT, you're going to want to focus on the top portion of the sight. The top, larger plus is 50 meters, with the smaller plus indicating 100 meters. Each box moving down indicates another 100 meters, as shown by the numbers on the left side. This means that 2 is 200 meters, 3 is 300 meters, and so on. The portion below is for the tandem round, which we'll go into later, as only hats have tandem rounds. On the bottom right of the sight, you'll notice something familiar, that same Stadia sight we found on our binoculars. There is one slight difference though. Whereas the binoculars were ranged for targets standing 1.7 meters tall, as we can see here, the PGO Stadia is ranged for targets 2.7 meters tall. Now, if 2.7 meters seems like an odd height, that's because when it was made, Russia's biggest threat was the Abrams tank, which is exactly 2.7 meters. Now, taking a look at the side-by-side, we can see that just like the binoculars worked on vehicles without their turrets, the PGO works on vehicles with their turrets, which is important to remember as you range targets using the Russian LAT. The Abrams lines up exactly with the bottom horizontal line and the 200 meter indicator up top. We aim where the horizontal line running from the 2 meets the vertical line in the middle, and fire. Now if you notice, that round had the same type of sparking animation we saw when we shot a frag at a vehicle with the RPG-7. That's because this heat round deflected. Taking a look at the Abrams, we can see that not only is it heavily armored, as indicated by the light blue, but the armor itself is also angled in a way to help deflect shots. As a LAT, you'll rarely be able to find an angle to penetrate anything on a tank, so the best option is to disable it for a friendly hat or other tank to finish the job. The key areas you'll be looking for are the tracks and the engine. Now we already covered the engine, but the tracks work in essentially the same way. Once the vehicle is tracked, a crewman must jump out to repair, making them a sitting duck. To finish up the PGO, the last thing I would like to mention is that it also has an indicator for leading targets depending on how fast they are going. Now from the middle and moving left or right, we can see 1 through 5. This is actually a speed indicator, and it allows us to lead any targets at the given range going from 10 miles per hour all the way up to 50 miles per hour. Although it's hard to really gauge speeds in squad, I simply like to use 1 for kinda slow, upwards to 5 as floor in it. This one will take some time to get used to. But the more you use the RPG, the more you'll find yourself not even looking at the numbers. Now let's take everything that we've learned so far and apply it to a moving tank. Using the PGO, we quickly range and find out that the target is roughly 400 meters away. We line up the tracks with the 400 meter horizontal indicator and take a guess at how fast it's going. Finding our correct leading shot, we fire. The tank is tracked and disabled, and we've done our job as a LAT. Now that we've covered LAT, let's get into HAT. These weapons can also be divided up depending on their utility, with anti-vehicle, anti-infantry, and even smoke rounds. If we take a second to look over the factions, we can see that insurgents and militia have 2 anti-tank weapons. Canada is the only Blue 4 faction with anti-infantry rounds, and the Americans are the only ones with smoke. As we mentioned previously, this kit is truly an evolution of LAT, and everything you just learned will be used to build upon when you're HAT. For the Americans and Canadians, you'll be using the Carl Gustaf. Unlike the Law, where the factions have pretty much the same weapon, these variants are pretty different depending on who you're playing as. For the Americans, their variant is the M3 MOS. It shoots tandem, heat, and smoke rounds and can accurately land these tandem rounds upwards of 500 meters. When looking at the sight, note that the marks go from 50 meters at the chevron located at the top of the sight all the way down to 500 meters, with 50 meter indicators between each 100 meter range as well. However, this sight also has the unique ability to also use the manual ranging with X and the scroll wheel. This will add onto the range indicated on the sight. For tandems, we can add an additional 500 meters, whereas heat and smoke we can add 700 meters. For example, if we were to scroll up to the 200 meter mark, this will mean that the 100 meter mark indicated on our sight will now shoot 300 meters. We can then say that the 400 meter mark will allow us to hit 600 meters. This also means that we can range all the way up to 700 meters, add it to 500 meters, and theoretically hit a target 1200 meters away. Do note that this is not available on the Canadian variant. Their sights use manual ranging up to 700 meters for the tandem and heat, and 1000 meters for high explosive. As we've mentioned a few times before, this HE round is not the same as heat, and it will not damage enemy vehicles. Instead, treat it as an anti-infantry frag round. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, these anti-tank kits are extremely varied, and when you select your kit, you need to make sure you're aware of what you're actually grabbing. To do this, you can check out the role loadout page on the spawn screen. Once there, we can select HAT, click again to verify which HAT kit we want to take a closer look at, and then review the weapons. Once here, we can then click on the weapon to double check what it actually fires, as well as how many rounds you'll be able to carry. Additionally, most anti-tank kits have not only variations in the type of AT rounds they use, but also the rifle itself. We can see that the HAT kit with the tandem and heat rounds has the EOTech sight, while the secondary HAT kit has the tandem and 2 high explosive rounds with the longer range C79A2. You can also double check your kit information on ammo crates when you go to change your kit. Now moving on to the British, their HAT kit has weapons we're already familiar with. Their tandem round is fired from the LAT, an AT variant which looks practically identical to the American weapon and can range up to 500 meters. Another weapon we're familiar with is the LAT, which fires their heat round. To be honest, there's nothing much to this kit, and if you're familiar with both the LAT and AT4 we've been practicing with the LAT earlier, then you'll be able to pick up and run with this kit without a problem. For the other factions, you'll primarily be using the RPG-7 or RPG-7 V2, just like LAT. Whereas Militia and Insurgents use the iron sights, as Russia, you'll be using the PGO scope again. This time, however, you'll want to pay attention to the bottom half of the optic. The middle portion, indicated by the 1, is 100 meters, moving up to 150 meters, and finally 200 meters. Additionally, the 300 meter mark for our heat and frag is the 50 meter mark for the tandem, indicated by the double horizontal line. Although this may seem confusing at first, once you know what to look for, it's incredibly easy to acquire a target and fire. I will say though, that not only does the tandem round have the shortest range, it also has the greatest drop, meaning that you may find yourself firing short a lot of the time as you get used to it. I tend to aim these rounds just a bit higher than what I think the range is, giving myself a little bit of wiggle room, since the worst thing is seeing that tandem round slam right into the dirt in front of the vehicle. Militia and Insurgents also have the RPG-29. It ranges up to 400 meters, is extremely accurate, and is the only HAT in the game with 2 tandem rounds. This means that an accurate player can destroy multiple vehicles all by themselves without needing to rearm off of an ammo bag or an ammo crate. However, to fully take advantage of the RPG-29, just as we did with the LATs, I'd strongly recommend bringing at least a motorbike to rearm 1 extra tandem round, or a techie to rearm multiple rounds. This will allow you to finish off enemy vehicles extremely quickly before they can get away. If you do this, however, Be aware of your surroundings. The RPG-29 is powerful, but has an extremely slow reload time. Find cover, finish reloading, then pop out and destroy your target. Now that we've gone over all of the LAT and HAT weapons, how about some anti-tank strategy? Even with the knowledge of these weapons and basic tips that we've already gone over, it's gonna take practice. And a lot of it.
Oh my god, both of you missed! You're fired! You're so fired!
Right, the one.
There you go.
But the first thing to know is that different rounds have different arming distances. To keep it simple, LATs, heats, HEs, and frags take 25 meters to arm, whereas HAT's tandem rounds take 40 meters. This means that if you fire the round too close to your target, you will see and hear this. Some larger rounds might even seem to disappear, but either way, it doesn't hit the target. As an anti-tank player, the worst thing you can do is waste a rocket because you were too close. Take the time to move around your target, get some distance, and then fire. Moving with another LAT, HAT, or rifleman is incredibly important. And as I mentioned earlier, as LATs, more often than not you will not destroy an enemy vehicle. And that is definitely the case if you're by yourself. Working in teams will allow you to get multiple LAT rounds on target, which can ultimately lead to a kill, or disable a vehicle and allow your HAT to mop it up. It's always important to try and hit critical components and make the best use of your round. Now we know about tracks and engines, but heavy vehicles like Bradleys, BMPs, and tanks have an ammo rack. An ammo rack is essentially where all the ammo in the vehicle is stored, and has a separate health pool from the rest of the vehicle. This means that if you can do enough damage to destroy that ammo rack, you can cause the ammo to cook off and explode, quickly destroying the vehicle. Taking a look at the BMP2, we can see that the ammo rack is underneath the turret. Side shots will most likely hit the tracks and not penetrate to the ammo rack. So our best bet would be to try and hit the rear, top armor and penetrate downwards. Tandem rounds are heavy, and at 50 meters, if aimed right at the turret, the round should drop, penetrating that weak part of the vehicle and detonating the ammo. With one well-aimed shot, we have destroyed an extremely deadly vehicle. Now, even if you don't destroy the ammo rack completely, the vehicle will still need to return to base in order to repair. And unlike the rest of the components, the ammo rack can take upwards of 10 minutes to fully repair, essentially taking the vehicle completely out of the fight.
That way you can put 2 hab radios down and put 4 habs around this point. That way we can put 1 hab on the point and 3 off of it.
Did you just cook off?
Attack them from all different directions.
Oh my god. The Challenger just cooked off. I killed it. Ammo racked it.
The second keynote is that you should make sure you're set when firing anti-tank. Whether you crouch or not is up to you, but by pressing shift, you'll steady your weapon and zoom in. Additionally, never fire these weapons while leaning. Lean shots result in the round flying off target in the direction of the lean. The only exception to this rule is for targets within that 30 to 50 meter range. Although I have fired heat rounds like this for vehicles circling a hab, I typically do lean shots for frag rounds, since they don't need to land exactly where I'm aiming at to do the damage I need. You also need to know your ammo rearm cost, since when you're moving with your squad, you'll typically have at least one rifleman with an ammo bag. As a squad leader, I always try to pair up anti-tank and riflemen so they have multiple rockets, since one ammo bag holds 100 ammo. As we see here in Narva, my squad calls out that a BMP is rolling up to the intersection. Both myself and the other hat move out to engage. We fire at basically the same time, and within an instant, that BMP is destroyed.
I hear it.
2 tap.
Ammo this way. I have ammo.
I hear that PTR coming back from the south.
And although this might go without saying, I have to say it again. LATs can't kill tanks. Yes, if you throw dozens of LAT rounds at a disabled engine, you might be able to get that final kill eventually, but do not waste your time trying to hit an enemy tank anywhere else in the tracks. Once disabled, the tank is a sitting duck that will then require someone to leave the safety of their tank in an attempt to repair. Additionally, now with the commander role, players can also call in airstrikes to knock out these tanks. Because of this, let your squad know that the tank is tracked, but also make sure that information gets to command chat. As a commander, I love a tracked tank, because a tank with an accurate mark can be dealt with incredibly quickly. And it's also really fun to watch.
There we go.
Play smart. As we've mentioned all throughout this video, when you're LAT, disable tracked vehicles first. When you're HAT, disable tracked vehicles first. Remember, you're an evolution of LAT. Don't go for the kill shots without first immobilizing the vehicle. Here's a good example. My squad first calls out a tank rolling into Novo. As HAT, I select my heat round and position myself to disable the vehicle. Once disabled, I then reposition to get a better shot on the tank. Not only hitting a weak point in the vehicle's armor, but penetrating that weak point and disabling another component, the engine. Additionally, you can see that a crewman had gotten out to repair, and unfortunately for him, also got killed by the round. In 2 shots, I have disabled this vehicle and killed one of its crewmen. More than likely, based on the way the tank is presenting with the smoke, he's at 50% health. One more tandem round should do it. Since we're so close to a fob, I fall back, grab another tandem round, and the tank is down. In this next example, I do something different since I'm by myself. I get some elevation. I highly recommend to try and use your environment when you're AT. Here I'm able to get on top of this silo so I can better see my target. I track the vehicle and then use my tandem round. As we learned earlier on, the top armor on the T-72 is weaker, and the ammo rack is right below the turret. From this angle, we can penetrate it, and as we can see, the tank is destroyed. If after all this, you're still not sure exactly how to get into the training range, first click training, and then select the right one down below with the correct faction you want. Currently, the Canadian version is only available by using admin commands. Once you're in game, press tilde, and then type admin change map, CAF Jensen's range V4, and press enter. You can then spawn in your own vehicles on the range to make it easier for you. Press Shift P to jump into admin cam to fly around, and then use the admin vehicle spawn commands to put whatever vehicles you want on the range. If you don't know them, you can find the complete list on the squad wiki. Now if at the end of practicing your range looks something like this, just restart the match. Do remember that offline damage is not correct and will not register. If you want to actually try and blow up vehicles, I'd recommend searching for Jensen's range in both the regular and custom server browsers. Now I know this was a lot to take in, but I really hope it helps. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more squad videos, and if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be working on getting more tutorial and guide videos like this on other things in squad in the future. But for now, that's it for me. Peace. He's down.